Hi, Steve. This is Janie. Thanks for doing the call.
Hi, Jenny.
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks. What have these last few months been like for you? Such a strange, difficult time for the country, for basketball, for sports life, for so many people. And what have your days been like? And I know it's got to be kind of a weird time.
Yeah, it's it's been sort of several different time periods within the few months. You always have a cooling off period when the season ends. Where you kind of decompress, and so there was definitely that decompression. Although we didn't know how long the quarantine would last or whether we were going to start back up. But I tried to just focus in on just getting some rest, and then there was the draft prep, several weeks of draft prep and uh, self-evaluation as an organization, spending a lot of time with Bob, really kind of going through everything that we do and trying to figure out ways to get better, since this was kind of the first time we've had a chance to breathe in a lot of ways, as an organization over the last 5 years. And then all of that was completely rendered meaningless over the last couple of weeks, given the events in our country, based on the death of George Floyd and the resulting protests and debate across the country. So it has been a very unique and important time for all of us. And in many ways, I just sort of look at it as a pause, a chance to really pause and kind of take stock, both individually and collectively as an organization.
Steve, what does your ideal summer look like? I mean, given obviously the circumstances, but how much would you want guys in? Are you thinking mini camp? I know summer league has been floated out there. Like, what would a good summer for you be with the guys?
Well, yeah, we're still trying to figure that out, Anthony. I think the league has been great about working with us on potential mini camps. We definitely need to get our team together for a period of time. I don't know for how long, but we definitely need to be together and have some practice sessions. And given that 22 of the teams are going to be allowed to do so for minimum of a couple weeks practice and a couple weeks of games, while the rest of us are not part of that, the league is sensitive to giving us the space that we're going to need. So we're still in touch with the league about what that means. I think what I would like as a coach is a couple of weeks of practice, at least maybe two different blocks of a couple of weeks where we can bring guys in and health permitting and regulations permitting, of course, given the virus. But if we could have a couple different blocks where our players come in, work with our training staff, we get them on the court, almost like an OTA for an NFL team, where we can install some things for next year, think about what we want to accomplish, and get some practice sessions in. I think it would bridge the gap towards a more normal off season, and then lead us into next season in a healthier frame of mind. So that's the idea in some form or fashion.
Yeah, this is maybe something you'll think about in November or December, but what is your concern level about just kind of like the staleness potentially of a lot of your players, who are going to have at minimum 9 months off, for some like Clay, basically, a year and a half off?
Yeah, I mean, that's one reason why I think it's important to mix in a couple of mini camps so that we can knock off some of that rust or staleness, whatever you want to call it. But who are we to complain? We complained enough about not having any time off over the last 5 years. So we can't now turn around and say we've got too much time off. So we're just going to take advantage of what we can and use the rest and use the time wisely. And I know that our players, whenever we come in to prepare for next season, our players are going to be raring to go. So I think in the end, it'll be a positive step, no matter how this plays out.
Steve, when you reflect on the season you had and so many challenges with players being down injured and the young players who were called upon who wouldn't have been maybe necessarily in other circumstances, just how they came out and competed night after night with an energy, maybe the record doesn't show everything that was part of this season. How much do you reflect on those guys and be proud of how they grew and came together?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to lose games consistently and have to be on the wrong end of the score night after night. It's a really hard thing to go through, and I'm proud of our players for still finding a way to make this season very productive despite the losses. I thought they showed a lot of fight, a lot of competitive spirit. And I thought a lot of guys really used the season to advance their careers, and that's important, both individually for them and for us as a team. So to think about the improvement of Marquise and Eric Paschal, Jordan Poole, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And to see some of the contributions made by guys who are fighting to try to make the league, whether it's Kai Bowman or Juan, Mike Mulder. It was really fun. It was fun to see them fight and fun to see them really learning about the NBA, learning how to be professional and figuring out the job. And so in the end, I'm very proud of them, and I have no doubt that we will be better for it next year.
Steve,
just sort of piggybacking on Janie's question there, what do you think collectively you guys can build on from this last season for next season?
Well, I think most players really see a huge jump early in their careers once they've kind of settled in and had a solid year under their belt. And so, I'm looking for a big leap forward for some of our younger players to the point where, they can get into our rotation. Now, who that is, that's up to them. They have to earn that next year in camp and exhibition season and all of that. But that's what we're really looking for. I mean, we want to be a contender. We want to be in the hunt. We got to establish ourselves as a team that can be a playoff team. And in order to do that and give ourselves a chance, we've got to get much better defensively. I thought we made strides as the season went along, and I think we should be better next year, given that, the experience and getting Steph and Clay back. And hopefully getting some help through free agency and the draft, and hopefully we can elevate our defense to the level it needs to be in order to be a playoff team and a contender.
Steve, Juan Toscano-Anderson has organized a couple different protests against police brutality, and a bunch of your players, including Clay and Steph, have attended at least one of them. And obviously your players have been pretty vocal on social media and what have you about everything going on with the George Floyd protests. What have been your thoughts just seeing all that
Well, I'm really proud of my players. I've been in touch with Juan. I think it's fantastic at such a young age to take the initiative to organize peaceful protest. That's what our country is about, and that's what it's in the Constitution. And for a group of young people to organize themselves and for our players to be a part of that and to follow through on it, it speaks to how much they care about the Bay Area and the community and each other. So I'm really proud of all of them.
Hey, Steve, Mark Magina here with USA Today. I hope you and the family are hanging in there during these tough times.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that note, I mean, obviously you've coached so many players that have spoken out about so many different racial issues over the years. I was wondering, what do you think you've learned, from those experiences and being able to talk with them about those things?
Well, I think we've always been very open as a coaching staff, and we've tried to give our players, plenty of freedom and space to speak their minds, not only with you guys, with the media, but also within our circle, within the confines of the organization and the team. And I think that's especially important right now. And so I think our players have grown comfortable speaking out about the things they feel are important. And now is a really important time to do so. And so we will try to continue to foster that kind of free thinking and free flowing communication with our players and our fans, and understand the role that we can play, not just in entertaining our fans, but being part of the community and being part of an overall community commitment to trying to build a safer and better society in the Bay Area. I think everybody plays a role in that, every citizen, and our players have big platforms to help along those lines, and I'm proud that they're using them.
Steve, does this feel different this time, where you have people taking to the streets all over the country, from rural towns to huge cities, and you've done town halls on gun violence and social issues, and could it be different this time?
Yeah, I think so. It feels different, Janie. We haven't had this level of public protest in a long time, and obviously it's these things happen for a reason. They just don't just come about all at once. There's a lot of frustration and trauma, and there's a lot that goes into this. And so I think, again, we all can play our own role in trying to help our community, and what that means for us as an organization. I think it means educating ourselves and educating our players, and in turn, us trying to help educate people in general through, we do a lot of appearances. Our players do a lot of appearances in schools. We have a huge educational component to our community foundation. And I think probably the most important thing we can really do, in my mind, after giving this a lot of thought, is really commit to teaching people about the African American experience in this country, and I'm not talking about the homogenized one that we all learned in American history in high school. We need to learn the real American history, the one that tells the truth about some of the awfulness to it, and we've got to be able to come to grips with it before we can do anything about it. That sort of reconciliation with the sins of our past is a crucial part of all this, and it requires a big effort for everybody to actually come to grips with that. It's really hard for us, since we love our country. It's hard for all of us to really come to grips with what we've put the African American communities through over the course of American history. And most people really don't know. And I know my education excluded so much of that. And so I would like to think that we can make a really concerted effort to learn more about that in order to be able to make some strides socially and politically, because it's the only way we'll have the foundation upon which to do so.
Steve, there are obviously so many variables in the future, and nobody has the answer right now. But from what you and Pop have been told in regard to Team USA, are you confident that NBA players are still on track to participate for the games next summer?
Believe it or not, I haven't had a single conversation with Pop about that, and the reason is because we don't know, and and we've been talking almost daily now for the last couple of weeks, and before that we were speaking once every few weeks, and so we haven't even had a single conversation because there's nothing to report. So we're just like you, Nick. We're just sort of waiting to hear what the news is, and if the news is good and that we're going to be able to take part, we'll be ready to roll. And if not, then we'll deal with that later.
If you mentioned NFL OTAs kind of as like a sample of what you might want. A lot of times when those veterans don't necessarily participate, but considering the circumstances, would you want like Steph and Clay and Draymond in there, like, working, doing the same thing everyone else is doing?
Oh yeah, 100%. I would not consider this, voluntary workouts. I mean, this is obviously, these are really unique circumstances. But given that we would be staring at a 9-month break, to be perfectly honest, I would be shocked if any one of those three guys said to me, "No, I don't want the work." They all know they need the work, and we all need the work, so they'll be there.
Have you given any idea of the summer league idea that's been floated out there? I know a lot of the eliminated teams are, not near you guys geographically, but would you prefer the camp over the summer league almost?
Yeah. We're not interested in a summer league, and now we would be if there is a maybe a more formal version of it after the draft, sort of like the normal summer league, where we could, maybe partner with a few teams nearby and have a few games with our young players and our rookies. We would be interested in something like that later on. I guess the draft is in October, right? From what I understand. So, but that's a different component to what we're discussing, if what we're talking about is, some kind of mini camp, and some of the other teams are interested in playing games, we would not be interested in doing that. And I've talked to a couple of the coaches about that, and every team has its own unique set of circumstances, and I definitely understand that a lot of the teams involved are younger and are more interested in getting game action for their players. But we're in a different space, and people understand that. So we'd be more interested in practice time.
Steve, this is somewhat of a lighthearted question. At Warriors basketball camp, they now have an 11-year-old on Zoom from Iceland, an 11-year-old in Iceland who is wearing a Steph Curry jersey and gets to be part of Warriors camp. And can you imagine? I mean, given this setting, they've made these camps virtual, and he has an opportunity he never would have had otherwise to be part of one of your camps, and it's pretty neat. What is that? Can you imagine what it means to him and his family? And he got a hat signed by Steph that arrived yesterday.
I love it. Well, we've known for a long time how popular the NBA is and how popular basketball is, and I suppose that popularity is sort of running along the same path as figuring out life during the quarantine. And nobody knew what Zoom was a few months ago, and now we've got a kid doing basketball camp on Zoom from Iceland. So we're all learning new ways to live, but I think that's a really cool dynamic. I'm glad it worked out.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, Coach?
Yeah. Would you mind?
Yeah,
hey,
go
Steve,
ahead.
it's Karis. Yeah. In 2016, Colin Kaepernick took a knee, and he lost his livelihood. And now in 2020, you've got Roger Goodell saying, "Yes, Black Lives Matter, and please take a knee now on the field." What do you think those moments are like for the athletes who go first, for the athletes who take that risk to be outspoken? And what's the best way to support these athletes who say things first and get vilified?
Oh, that's a good question, Kara. I think that my sense a few years ago was that Kaepernick would ultimately be considered a hero based on the experience that Muhammad Ali had when he protested against going to Vietnam and was barred from fighting for years and was one of the most hated men in America, and eventually he became one of the most beloved. And so I think oftentimes the very act of making a groundbreaking statement can be so surprising and shocking that it's not fully appreciated until later on. And so my sense is that eventually Colin will be recognized for the gesture that he made and for the price that he paid for it. I'm glad that the NFL is now supporting him. I do think this feels different this time, and there's more and more people are becoming truly aware of what's what the experience is for the African American community, and they're realizing that we have to do something about it as a country. We can't just sit here and nod our heads and say yeah and move on with our daily existence. We've got to actually all take part, and I think the beginning of this was this current movement anyway has been in the works for a while, probably going back to much earlier than Colin. Even the Ferguson incident in 2014 and others that led to a lot of protest. But this is definitely the culmination of a lot of frustration and trauma and work, and it does feel like a tipping point, and I hope that it is.
Great. Anything else for Coach?
Steve, you mentioned your
Right.
draft. I was just curious, in retrospect, what did you learn from looking at the film of a bunch of these guys?
Yeah, well, it's the first time I've ever really been heavily involved, just because I haven't had the time, and so it's been a lot of fun to watch these college games and international games, and then we've done a few Zoom interviews with players as well. So I'm enjoying the process, and Bob does an amazing job of really taking his time and gathering information and not making rushes to judgment. Everybody wants to do a mock draft every single day. If the draft were today, who would you take first, and what's your top 5, what's your top 10? And the thing I've learned from Bob is none of that matters. What matters is all the information that you can gather leading into the draft, and so that's my focus, is trying not to trying to resist the urge to just sort of make blanket observations and say, all right, I either like this guy or I don't. There's so much that goes into it, and there's a lot of study and a lot of different dynamics.